Hero Class Civil Warfare by Rogue Druid. Chapter 17 Midnight Bash, Buildings Crash. Day 2, 0 hours, 21 minutes, 12:21 a.m. local time. The truck roared down the street and only slowed at the last moment, skidding as it went around a far corner and down a side street. Finally, after a running battle, it pulled into a short driveway to a tall warehouse at the corner of the fake city. The truck pulled into the lot and took a sharp turn, fishtailing as it turned around and pulled up aside an open loading dock and braking. "You are late," came the terse voice of Tokoyami Fumikage, stepping into sight. With the red glow etching his outfit, he appeared ethereal, menacing, and demonic all at the same time. Behind him, Kuroiro Shihai moved forward in a forklift, lowering a pallet with a thick wooden crate onto the back of the truck. Through the shattered rear window, Yusetsu leaned out and touched both the pallet and the truck bed, the faint hiss of them fusing reaching their ears as the two other villains stepped into the truck. "Sorry, fine problem," Sen muttered, finally taking a moment to reload and check his guns. "So we heard," Shihai's voice, dry and rough, confirmed. "Let's go. We have unwanted friends coming our way." Yusetsu needed no further prompting. With sharp motions, he popped the clutch, slammed the gas, and let the brakes go. With a squeal, the truck shot off, the three passengers in the back holding the cabin and sides as the truck sped up. "Fuck! Incoming on the truck!" That's when the massive glacier formed and blocked off the road they were heading for. "20 minutes and 5 floors of melting, twisted combat in a 7-story building later, and the fight was still not over. Each floor they had passed through got destroyed thoroughly before the villains escaped, taking the stairs or simply falling through a floor like liquid as they evaded capture. Thank God for Gunhead Sensei's insane training regimen. The heroes were running ragged and the villains weren't doing much better. The three heroes stood staring past a twisted and distorted corridor, into two massive handfuls of bricks pulled from the wall of the hallway and smashed into a half-formed wall between the heroes and the villains. At some point, Hononuki Juzo had lost his staff and hat, now looking worn down, sporting quite the bruise across his temple with a lucky hit by Tsuburaba. Tendo Itsuka looked far worse, her arms black and red, dark purple bruises already forming up to her shoulders, and her hands all colored in purple. "Alpha, Gamma is coming in now." Uraka couldn't help but grin as she heard the good news of her backup coming in. Her opponents tensed as they readied to fight once more. "Wait, watch out for the acid!" Ojiro frowned as he looked at the two girls who had intercepted his team. With a quick motion, he held his two allies, both hard-headed as could be, back from running into a trap. A rooftop layered with pools of acid, the corrosion weak enough to not kill, but more than strong enough to weaken the roof to the consistency of something like styrofoam. Across the stretch of the decayed and corroded roof were the two most disturbing villains he had seen yet, Alien Queen and Poltergeist. Ojiro didn't know their true villain aliases, and honestly never wanted to find out. "I hate horror movies," Ojiro muttered, and then he was busy dodging acid and spectral limbs. Intercept successful. Horrors on the roof of the exit with the company. Get ready. Juzo felt elation. They could finally stop delaying for the others. The original plan had been to simply escape, but with the eyes on them, Khan and Hacker had suggested they fight, drawing it out as long as possible. Now, with their reinforcements here and ready to exit, he'd tapped into the reserve he had been holding on to, pulling as much power and range from his quirk as he could. With that in mind, he smiled and touched the ground. A contact lens in his left eye whirred to life, turning his gaze red as he highlighted the densest material around him, including the building support beams. Foundational, he called out, making the heroes tense and look worried. He knew his bright red eye would freak them out. The lens cost him some depth perception, but it made the entire eye, from sclera to pupil, turn a uniform red. Beyond that, calling out attacks was childish, but it was something that grabbed attention. What the heroes had failed to notice was that they had led the fight so that they were against the back half of the building, the half that was but a short alley from the neighboring building, one which had a convenient entrance to the sewers in its basement. Quite convenient, but crossing the alley would be suicide with enemies like this team of heroes. Instead, let's make the alley disappear. As his power encroached into the building and took root, he smiled. It strained slightly as he selected and reached up and around him, as well as below. Collapse. Just like that, yet another building became a casualty. Around the hall, in front of his so helpful defense, the walls and ceiling sagged and began to stretch, the floor tilting and separating as it snapped and the weight took hold. The rest of the building shuddered as well, key supports twisting and making the heroes yelp, the building seemingly sinking in on itself. As the lower floors of the back third of the building sagged and sunk back into the alley, Itsuka reached out, her hand growing as she punched out through the back wall and into the wall of the building behind them. Shoto stood atop the 30-foot-tall glacier, ice in his right side steaming away as a small flame flickered across him. "Surrender or fall," he called, voice sharp as the 4 people in the truck looked at him. He watched them glance at another and then back at Shoto. He doubted they would surrender, but protocol needed to be maintained. He was right. A squeal of tires on asphalt and the truck began to reverse away at high speed, swerving slightly as it backed up, which is why he had his team ready themselves at the far end of the street. With a surge of cold through his side, he readied another glacial blast. He would be the anvil for his team. Then he flinched, prematurely drawing a wall of ice between him as it splattered with several red spots. Of course, those paint guns. With a wave of his hand, he sent a wide, curved slope of ice down towards the truck, intending to freeze it in place. The truck seemed to slow its reverse, the sound of wheels spinning and squealing against the street echoing as it came to a stop, and then charged at the glacier. A wave of black energy lashed out and shattered the still-forming wave of ice. The energy and shadow took form, a massive bird-like shape, consisting of static and shadow. It crashed into the glacier, sending him falling back as the mountain of ice shattered. Shit, Tokoyami. And it's just past midnight. Twisting around, fire and ice at his fingertips, Todoroki prepared for a fight like none he had never faced. Mina and Reiko danced back across the rooftop from the heroic bulldozers that were trying to move across the roof, led by Ojiro and his impeccable sense of balance. Mina sprayed acid on safe paths, and Reiko spawned arms to try and pull them off balance while keeping them off guard. The villains knew where it was safe to stand, Mina's visor highlighting stable supports even as the roof began collapsing. Most of the damage was on the west side of the building, the location where the neighboring building had all but fallen apart, already caving in, all thanks to Juzo. Slate and Smuggler are in the building. Get to the ground floor. Hitoshi's voice was welcomed as it confirmed that the plan had worked. With the four of them, they could solidly block off the tunnels long enough to vanish into the sewer system and cover their tracks. "See ya, boys!" Mina called, already identifying a weak point that would lead to the ground floor. Leaping, she hit it feet first, hands and arms braced out to the side to clear the entrance as Reiko moved with quick steps and a twist, falling after her partner with a pair of raised middle fingers. Mina led the two through the already acid-covered floors, past places where the ceiling was sagging to the point of collapse, and down a stairwell to the ground floor. They busted out the first floor to see a limping Smuggler and a dust-covered Slate. "Let's go. Drug runner, acid in the room." Done and done. Turning back as the three fled through another door, she pumped her most vicious and potent acids across the floor. Normally, she wouldn't be able to output this much, but she had spent most of the last 3 days draining her strongest acids into maize storage, and then letting the mad engineer distill them. Acid sprayed out from pressurized vents across her hand and arms in a mist. The room, a bakery of some sort, was left hissing behind them, the metal appliances already sinking and decaying as a warning. They filed down the narrow concrete-walled stairs to the basement, where a sewer grate sat. Leaving Smuggler to rest, Drug Runner took the point here, grasping each edge of the grate and leaving it hissing as Itsuka stepped up and threw a 3-foot-tall right hook, plowing the now weak gate off its hinges. With that, the two teams vanished, leaving behind a chunk of pulled-apart stone forming a wall of interlocking stone arms. After all, Reiko was known as Lift for a reason, even if she hadn't shown it yet. Falling, Shoto twisted, bringing fire to life as the shadow familiar crashed into him once more, making the dark bird destabilize from its attack. Todoroki landed and was already pushing off down the road south. His eyes formed a ramp beneath his feet, letting him skate through the street as he tried to catch up, but the gap was growing only larger as the truck picked up speed. He saw the guns come up once more. He skidded and swerved, pulling pillars of ice up ahead of him to block the shots, only for the now recovered familiar to crash through them once more. For 3 blocks, he and the villains had been in this chase of stop and go, him making the truck skid by icing the road, only to have to defend himself as they escaped his traps. He was losing, and he knew why. His fire. Right now, despite his resolve to use both sides of his quirk, he was unpracticed with his fire and with swapping or combining the two. Aside from overwhelming force like at the sports festival, he was open and clumsy when trying to use both abilities, and they weren't giving him time to prepare a stronger attack. Either Dark Shadow or the guns kept him from building up power. The ice was wasted building cover for the guns, and the familiar was only slightly weakened by the glow of his fire. His internal dilemma was cut off as 2 cylinders were tossed into the field of shattered ice that he was passing through. His eyes widened, and he reflexively covered himself in a half-dome of ice. A smart move, as the two concussive explosions shattered the crystalline structure and cracked his defense. He burst free in anger and focus, rushing forward, just in time for him to meet a flashbang less than a meter in front of him. 3 minutes later, when Shota could finally see and stand once more, with Shishida and Rin at his side, the truck and its cargo were gone. Three days before the exam. Sparring, and surprise, more sparring. For 3 days now, the hour of class time scheduled by the teachers for the teams to get ready for the exercise, which replaced foundational heroics, was filled with sparring. 1-on-1, 2-on-2, teams of 3 or 4, all backed by the constant litany of swears and insults from their illustrious leader, Bakugo Katsuki. God, the teachers made the wrong choice, was their constant thought. Looking around, they can see others with the same thought on their faces. Their leader was going to burn them out before they even reached the exercise. He stayed for this 1 hour and then headed home after school. That was it. Aside from his rants that they were all morons and extras and that he would rip apart the Kingpin, Deku, I thought it was Izuku, himself. No teamwork, no sense of companionship or trust. It was maddening. It was middle school politics all over again. So, you want to defect, right? Mused Izuku, sitting at a desk in some conference room he had acquired the use of. In the corner of the room, 2 other guys hung out. The first with spiky purple hair, the other was Monoma. Yes, our leader's a goddamn madman, and it's going to tear us apart. I want to be on the winning team, they scowled, sipping at their full glass of water. A grin, soft and relaxed. Yeah, that's Kacchan, I guess. But you're sure about wanting to be a villain? Now the grin was sharper, more focused on them. I can't guarantee it will work, you know. If Kacchan finds out, you'll be taken out and I can't have you defect until the exam. He leaned forward, body language open and inviting. I'm dead serious. A pause. Then, one last test. Sit here and let Shinso ask you a few questions. You'll black out for a moment, but don't worry, I'll explain later. Okay. They wondered what Shinso's power was, some sort of truth. All of a sudden, they blinked, and Shinso was leaning back from across the desk with a satisfied grin. In front of them, the glass was empty, and the clock was missing almost 10 minutes. Well then, Izuku grins from over the purple-haired boy's shoulder. Smile wide and genuine and filled with joy. Welcome to the team, Extortion. They couldn't help but smile. Hey guys, it's Tempe. Thank you for getting this far. I really enjoyed reading this fanfiction and I wanted to share it with you. So many people wrote their own takes on how the Civil War for AU would go down, but I enjoyed this one specifically. So if you enjoyed this as much as I did, please consider giving me a like, comment, or subscribing. If you have any suggestions that you would like me to read, please leave a comment or send it to the email in the description. That's everything, so I will see you in the next one. Bye!